Curiosity moves us.
It gets us across the street,
the city,
the region,
across state lines,
and party lines.
And from what we've seen along the way, we're in some very good company, where the spirit of curiosity is not only alive and well.
It's how we discover all we share
In the public square.
We've spent the last 20 years connecting people to ideas
And to each other.
and we are just getting started.
We're always open.
always free.
And you're always invited.
Curiosity loves company.
Good evening, everybody. Hello, good evening. It's so lovely to have you here. Welcome to the ASU California Center Broadway at the historic Herald Examiner Building in downtown Los Angeles. With great respect, ASU and Zocalo Public Square acknowledge the Yuhaviatum, the first people of this ancestral and unceded territory of Yaangna that we know as downtown Los Angeles. We honor their elders, past and present, and the Yuhaviatum descendants, who are part of the Gabrielino Tongva and the Fernandino Tataviam nations. We recognize that the Tongva are still here, and we're committed to lifting up their stories, culture, and community. As Ku'uyam, we recognize our responsibility and obligation to care for their land. I'm Moira Shuri, Executive Director of Zocalo Public Square, a unit of ASU Media Enterprise. At Zocalo, our mission is to connect people to ideas and to each other. Everything we do is free and everyone is welcome. Arizona State University, our parent company, is committed to opening up this space to our friends in the community. We're delighted to be a part of LA's history in the historic Herald Examiner Building, which is a historic cultural monument, and a building erected to disseminate facts and knowledge, a mission that we share in spirit with Cal State LA and the Pat Brown Institute. This building was built in 1914 as the headquarters for William Randolph Hearst's Los Angeles Examiner, and it was designed by Julia Morgan, the first licensed female architect in California. This room that we're sitting in was where the printing press was located. We're proud of the history of this building and even more proud of its future. We are an innovative and flexible institution. Our charter states that we're responsible for the economic, social, cultural, and overall health of the communities that we serve, and we serve Los Angeles. It's an honor to host this event at such a crucial time in our nation's history. And now I'd like to hand it over to Sasha Rice, Executive Director of the Pat Brown Institute.
Hi, welcome. So great to see so many friends, and this is the future of democracy coming home. When I was planning this event over the summer, I added that little subtitle, Coming Home, because I thought we might be in the situation that we're in, and we have an opportunity to really focus on Los Angeles and California. Before we begin, I just wanted to say a few thank yous. First of all, I wanted to thank our sponsors, the Eli and Edith Broad Foundation, SEIU Local 721, Adventist Health White Memorial, Charlie Wu, and all of our board members. I also want to thank our staff. Tatiana, Randy, and Francisco have been amazing. And also our student professionals, Amy, Lizette, Chris, Julie, and also our Galbraith Fellows alums. We have several in the room, so we're really glad you could be here. Today's panel is a culmination of our civic series. You might have seen the flyers. We put them out so you could get a sense of what we've been up to. We've been really focused on connecting with our students on the campus of Cal State LA, where we're housed. And now it's an opportunity to bring our wider community together. The heart of the Institute's mission is about the power of participation. And so I thought this would be a really great moment to have a conversation so we can continue to engage. We always aim to convene a diverse group of stakeholders and have a meaningful dialogue. And I just want to say that I'm going to continue to choose curiosity. I'm going to continue to choose connection and action. And I think you guys will too, and that's why you're here. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our moderator, and then she'll introduce the panelists. We've got quite a distinguished group for you tonight. So our moderator is Sarah Swadwani, and she's an assistant professor of politics at Pomona College and a non-resident fellow of the Harvard Kennedy School Ash Center for Democratic Governance and Innovation. And she's also served as a commissioner on the 2020 Citizens Redistricting Commission for the state of California, which successfully redrew district lines. And she's also, her research examines voting behavior, elections, voting rights, public opinion, public policy, and with an emphasis on representation of racial, ethnic, and immigrant communities. So you know why she's here. Her analysis of politics and elections has been featured in the Washington Post, New York Times, CNN, NPR, and on and on. She also produced a amicus brief for the California Supreme Court that summarizes the empirical research of the benefits of maximizing voter strength and historically excluded communities. So we are so grateful to have her here. She is also a senior researcher at AAPI Data and a member of the Executive Council of Western Political Science Association and a faculty fellow at USC Schwarzenegger Institute for State and Global Policy. She has so much more to her resume, but I'm gonna let her take the mic, and welcome to you all, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Sasha, and thank you for the very expansive bio that you offered for me. That's fantastic. It is such a pleasure to be here this evening and to see everyone who has gathered in this historic time period. Of course, we know that an election just happened, and elections, of course, have consequences. And here in California, we're still counting those ballots, especially in many of our swing districts that are still yet to be decided. But we know the results across the nation. We are on the brink of a new presidential administration, which is going to have serious impacts here in Los Angeles, but of course across the state of California. Here at home, we've also witnessed some changing political winds. Certainly, if we take a look at some of the propositions that were on the ballot this year, we of course saw the rollback of criminal justice reforms, which no doubt we will get into discussing this evening to some extent. And in this time, there's been this sizable critique of California and of the values that we hold dear here in California, values such as uplifting the voices of those who have for so long not been heard, for protecting the natural resources that we have here in the Golden State, and for embracing the vast diversity that we have here in California, including people from all walks of life, from the blue districts and from the red districts, and even from all those purple districts, which I'm proud to say I had a hand in drawing. And it's in this time period where there's also plenty of uncertainty. We do not know what is going to be coming in the next several months and years. And there's fear in so many of the communities that we work in about what that future will look like. And here in Los Angeles, we have an opportunity to respond to this time period and to be that beacon on the hill in so many ways. There's other bright spots here in Los Angeles too. We have passed incredible governance reforms, both at the city and county level. And in the coming years, the city of Los Angeles will, for the first time, have an independent redistricting commission. We'll have strengthened ethics reforms for the city council. And I'm so excited because, of course, the Pat Brown Institute played an enormous role in bringing together scholars to help prepare a set of recommendations. I know some of my colleagues who worked on that with me are here this evening as well. And at the county level, we are on the cusp of historic change, an expansion of the board, the creation of a CEO. These are changes that have been discussed for nearly 100 years and have never been advanced until now. So we have plenty to do here in Los Angeles and across the state of California. And I'm so excited to have this panel to bring to you some incredible folks that will really tell us what we're supposed to do in these coming weeks and months and years. I want to start, of course, right here in the beginning with Derek Steele, who has the best sweatshirt that I've seen in a while. Derek leads the Inglewood-based Social Justice Learning Institute, SJLI, in combating inequities in communities of color. He's a grad of Morgan State University and started in this institution, in this organization, as a volunteer, and today he serves as their executive director. SJLI, I have to get the letters right, was named the California Nonprofit of the Year in 2023. And Derek has served as the county's Care First Community Investment Advisory Committee and served on the steering committee of the California Jobs First LA High Road Transition Collaborative. Shane Murphy Goldsmith, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for quite some time, is the president and CEO of the Liberty Hill Foundation, one of the nation's most admired social change foundations. She is the former vice president of the Los Angeles Board of Commissioners, as well as having served on the LA Homeless Services Authority Commission, which means that Shane is in the center point of all of the most pressing issues in Los Angeles today. Shane was a Durfee Foundation Stanton Fellow focusing on youth justice issues and won the 2014 Congressional Hunger Center Alumni Award Leadership Award. So many accolades for all of these folks. Karthik Ramakrishnan, my very dear colleague here, has served in leadership roles that span academia, government, public policy, and philanthropy. He is currently a researcher at the UC Berkeley and director of AAPI Data, which is a nationally recognized publisher of demographic data and policy research on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And it was some years ago that Karthik roped me into being a part of AAPI Data, and so he always calls me when he needs something. That's the only time I hear from him. Karthik has an incredible resume. He's served for 4 years as the Associate Dean of the UC Riverside School of Public Policy, and for 19 years as a professor there. He has published more articles than you could ever read in your lifetime, including 7 books, dozens of op-eds. His most recent books include the Citizenship Reimagined, as well as Framing Immigration. He was named to the Frederick Douglass 200 and is currently working on projects related to racial equity in philanthropy and regional development. And finally, Yvette Ale Ferlito is an abolitionist movement leader and co-founder and executive director of La Defensa. As a queer femme and formerly undocumented person, they have been organizing and leading anti-carceral campaigns in California for nearly a decade. Yvette has helped found and lead multiple coalitions, including Justice LA and Reimagine LA as well. So we have a panel full of experts from right here in the Los Angeles community and from across the state, and I have no doubt that we are going to have an incredible conversation, so please do give them all a round of applause. So we'll jump right in. I think these mics are already on, so be careful
Mic
what you
check.
say.
Yeah.
So obviously, we just had a rather consequential election. Let's just get started and jump into this. And I want to hear just first some of your initial reactions in this time period. What stands out for you from a data perspective? Karthik, let's perhaps start with you, and then we can move to the other panelists to see what they're seeing on the ground.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, and thank you, everyone, for putting this on and for the invitation. I think we will have different waves of data that I think will update our understanding over time. But I think the first draft is definitely in. We're in the middle of the second draft. I think part of the first draft is what looks like movement and support among several demographic groups. Now, when I say what seems like movement is we need to be a bit careful because we don't know what turnout numbers look like and what differential turnout looks like. What looks like a movement might also be certain groups turning out more than expected and other groups turning out less than expected. And then it looks like a shift in opinion, but it's actually differential mobilization. The answer is, of course, it's going to be a mix of persuasion of people who switched, persuasion of people who've never voted before and are voting for the first time, but also people who stayed at home who might have been inspired to turn out before. But I think all of that put together, I think it's a pretty damning story for Democrats and progressive causes more generally. I mean, I don't know if people should have gloated, in the weeks going in that Trump and the RNC did not have an institutionalized ground game, and that there was a tried, tested, and true machine that the Democrats had that would turn them all out. And then very late, we learned, like, oh, yeah, they went through various contractors. People were making fun of Elon Musk, and like he was a neophyte and didn't really know how to do voter mobilization. Well, it seems like they tried new techniques and reached out to voters and turned out low propensity voters. And that, I think, is an important part of the story that we need to reckon with. We think of low propensity voters as only on the progressive side. There are low propensity voters that are persuadable or are right-leaning to begin with. And I think that's probably going to be the dominant story because it matters for what it means for the future. I think for people in progressive movements, especially like outside of the party, to what extent do we want to be right? And to what extent do we want to govern? And if you want to govern, you need to win.
Well, Karthik, you really brought us right to the center of the national debate, right, which is going on. I mean, every time I open a news outlet, a newspaper or some other outlet, you hear something about this conversation about where do Democrats go from here. And you said it yourself, right? This election was really a damning result, not only for Democrats, but for progressives as well. And we happen to have a whole lot of progressive folks here on this panel today. So I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts. How do you see this result? And not to put you on the spot, but is there some sort of response to this critique? Because certainly Karthik isn't the first one to raise this. This is the topic du jour nationally. Ezra Klein saying that the Obama coalition has come to an end and the Democrats need to be really thinking about what their future is looking like. What are those major takeaways? I put a lot out there, but what are some of the major takeaways at this moment with that full recognition that there's going to be plenty more to unpack in the coming weeks and months?
For me and the work of my partners, various coalitions, and the work we've been doing with community, I think it's really important to ground this in history, right? Since Reconstruction, on a path toward a abolitionist democracy, right? To make sure that folks can live whole, free, thriving lives, all people, and all meaning all, there has always been a redemptionist backlash to progress, right? And so, you know, I can give all the different examples, but I think, and what I'm saying, you all get that. So when you start to think about the last 10 years, last 20 years, but even in the last 4 years, with the progress that we had in 2020 and all the reasons why that progress actually came about, from the passage of Measure J to Gascon being brought into office, to Holly Mitchell being elected, to you keep going, Mayor Bass being elected, and there's been some major wins. The reductionist backlash is inevitable because the system of white supremacy and how it works, and the idea of making sure that the centering of people and all people belonging, not being the center and trying to maintain the status quo, the backlash is always going to be there. So I think looking at that and understanding what's in front of us, in the arc of any amazing story, when you have the adversarial force come into play, the heroes get to arrive. And so the question is, over the next 4 years, over the next 10 years and beyond, who will step up to be the heroes and continue in this continuum of change that we have established and that we're a part of, right? When you think about the arc of moving the needle towards justice and all of the different people, the different movement builders, the different organizations that are part of that continuum, we who are doing that work now are in that continuum of change. So with that being said, and looking at some of the results, there's still progress in it, right? Measure A gets passed. So the movement towards making sure that people can be housed and also be taken care of, as far as the services that we might be able to render, and coming forward with that of not from a government solution to this, but a people-led solution to how we do that. Like, I see that as a win in the continuum of Measure J. And when you see what Measure J turned into with CFCI and the 424 different organizations that are now funded with public dollars to be able to do the work they were doing, and greater majority of them being organizations that were $1 million or less in their annual budgets, who are now have stability to be able to not only keep their doors open, but also do the work even more effectively and efficiently, I only wonder what Measure A can bring, right? When we start talking about Measure G, and even though it just got passed, let's be clear, and there's a lot of reason why there was some pushback behind it, because this was a rush through process that had its own agenda about how they wanted to bring these things forward. I think it is now an important piece of that puzzle of making sure all those people who had an inkling toward wanting to see this be more toward a democratic process, we have to be involved. Because just like Measure J, they got right to it right away. So come November, they had the advisory committee, and they were ready to start talking about how to spend that money. Measure G gonna have that same type of energy, so we gotta be ready to actually rock and roll. So I'm saying these things to say that the arc of history of creating progress, we are in the midst of it. What has happened is not unique. What we do with the information that was just shared and how we set ourselves up for success to be able to create that change, that's the step that we need to be taking together.
Oh yeah, I have a lot to say about this. I want to start off by grounding us in a little bit of local history. So during the last Trump administration, community organizers led by the Justice LA Coalition stopped a $3.5 billion jail expansion plan.
Talk about it.
During the last Trump administration, $3.5 billion, almost a decade of organizing. During the last Trump administration, community organizers worked with philanthropy and the county to write the Alternatives to Incarceration Work Group final report, which is the magnum opus in the county for care, which is dictating and guiding all of the policies that are coming out of the county right now. That was a year-long process during the Trump administration. During the last Trump administration is when we wrote and passed Measure J. I got a phone call from our folks at United Way because we had done, and by we, the Justice LA Coalition, had just done a county-wide survey asking community members from across the county, where do y'all want to spend your money? Our survey showed that LA County, by and large, wanted to invest in services and housing and mental health care and drug treatment rather than incarceration, overwhelmingly. Their polling said the same. So we came together and we wrote Measure J because although the Board of Supervisors adopted the recommendations in the ATI report, we knew that that could easily be performative. You can adopt a report, but that doesn't mean you're going to put money behind it. And so we wrote Measure J, we created the Reimagine LA Coalition, and we passed Measure J with over 2 million votes. Yes, we did that. We did that through the support of our friends like Liberty Hill and so many organizations throughout LA County. And I appreciate you raising Measure J, Derek, because to date, we've allocated more than $600 million to community-based services. That's youth development, that's housing, that's reentry support. And so we've been able to maintain those wins. We were challenged right away by the law enforcement special interest groups, but we won in court. And so this idea that our wins are just being rolled back is not quite accurate here in Los Angeles. And I want to point out a few things to look at in this last election cycle. So we had a conservative DA win, right, Hodgman, with about 1.9 million votes. We also had 2 progressive public defenders win on that same ballot with about 1.7 million votes. There is some overlap there. The same folks that voted for a conservative MAGA DA also voted for 2 progressive public defenders to be on the Superior Court in Los Angeles. And this is only the second time that a public defender was elected. So the very first was in 2022, where the La Defensa Justice PAC supported Judge Holly Hancock, and we got the first public defender ever elected to the Superior Court. This cycle, we supported 2 new public defenders. We trained them on how to run for office. We created a judicial training academy. We trained a whole cohort of attorneys and selected Erica Wiley and George Turner. And they won handedly over their opponents, who were DAs. So what does that tell us? For us, we had been doing 5 years of grassroots organizing, educating the community about the importance of voting for judges, because most folks don't know who to vote for judge. You look at your ballot and you see these names, you don't know who they are. And we spent 5 years creating watchdog programming. We created Rate My Judge, which is a platform that anybody in the community can use to rate their experience in the courtroom. We adopted Court Watch LA and expanded it so that we're able to have eyes and ears inside of the courtroom. We trained hundreds of volunteers throughout the county. And so what I'm getting out here is not just a humble brag about our organization, but really that grassroots organizing, methodical grassroots organizing can move people to understand why voting for progressive judges, for progressive candidates. We saw Isabel Jurado win the city council. Like, progressives are still winning, but it's not because of the Democratic establishment. It's because of grassroots organizing. So I do take issue with conflating progressives and the Democratic Party as if they're one and the same. Grassroots organizing is often outside of these institutions, outside of these party institutions. They're rooted in our communities and in our lived experiences. When Trump was elected, immediately I thought about my dad with his deportation order. This is my lived experience. This is the things we know and breathe every day, which is why it's important for us to understand how our local policies are also connected to our national policies. Right. Because Prop 36 passed, that means suddenly Trump has a deportation machine in Prop 36. Just last year, 68% of people in deportation proceedings entered those proceedings because of criminalization, because of contact with law enforcement. They didn't even have to be convicted, just sitting in a jail and being able to be detected. So it's important to understand that in our communities, we actually have the answers. And Angelenos, like Derek pointed out, supported Measure A, they support services. They support the things that actually impact their lives. So if we try to sway them with institutional power, in like the Democratic Party, we are missing the need for direct grassroots conversations with our community members to really understand what they need and actually educate our community members around how these systems work. And being able to do that grassroots organizing meant that we got 2 public defenders elected on the same ballots that a conservative DA got elected. And that is significant. That is significant because it tells us where we missed the ball in certain campaigns, how we can do better in terms of our messaging, and the fact that California and Los Angeles in particular are primed for more progressive wins. Right. We just need to get to the people.
Right. I love that. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's right. I love that, and I think that's such a helpful kind of perspective, especially based here in Los Angeles, and that reminder, right, that when we talk about progressive, it is something separate and outside of the Democratic Party. I want to push us a little bit further, and Shane, I'm going to start with you because I know you had been hoping to jump in there, and really think about, as we move into these next couple of months, what does that look like? What does this new administration mean to our communities, to the communities that we serve? What does it mean symbolically, and what does it mean practically? And I think those are 2 very different things about how this administration might operate on the ground here in Los Angeles, but also what does it symbolize through Los Angeles, and as well as in California, right? How does that change across the state, and what role does the state of California or either organizations or the city, what role do they play in developing a relationship with this new administration, whether that be one of collaboration or one of defense?
I'm going to let someone else take that question.
Well, I can jump on it. I mean, I think different things can be true simultaneously. True. And I think what is true in the city of Los Angeles, and even maybe to some extent Los Angeles County outside of the city of Los Angeles, is not necessarily true what is happening in the Inland Empire, Orange County, and even in Orange County, it's a bit of a mixed bag. But, you know, I think that Trump 2.0 is going to be very different. We already are seeing that Trump 2.0 is likely going to be very different from Trump 1.0. 4 years of administrative experience and expertise means a fair amount of learning, a fair number of maybe more responsible Republicans that tried to slow the roll on some of the more out there ideas are no longer in the supply pool of talent for serving as cabinet secretaries. And so we see, you know, they say personnel is policy. We see that, and who are likely going to get rubber stamped through the Senate. Maybe there's 2 or 3 that are contentious, but there's a whole bunch that are, you know, by their own vision and declaration, going to be massive disruptors to key federal agencies. And that's going to have huge implications to the state of California, to Los Angeles County, to the city of LA. So I absolutely, I mean, I think I think there's a healthy dose of kind of relishing this resistance, but even back then it went beyond that, right? It was like proactively offering ideas, right? It wasn't just an oppositional stance, and I think that's going to be really important moving forward. And one thing I'll just say, you know, and I need to leave at 8 o'clock to catch my flight, but you know, so the temptation is for California to say, we're going to defend California, you have to come through us. And I think a lot of that is, it's smart politics and it's smart policy, smart movement work. I think I shouldn't say the other side, I think Republicans, you know, who are going to join this administration, but also Congress and the Supreme Court are very differently constituted than they were 8 years ago or 6 years ago. So I think it's going to be, the nature of the challenge is going to be different. One solution I think that'll be important, and this is something that, you know, from the came out of our California 100 work, you know, California 100, it started in 2021, right? So it was after 4 years of the Trump administration. And initially the temptation might have been to figure out how can California go it alone? You know, I don't think anyone on our commission wanted to secede from the US, but I was like, how can we protect the gains we have and make sure that, you know, California and even sub-jurisdictions in California can live out their values through policy and have those policies protected. By the time we got done, people said, you know, even if California can go it alone, we shouldn't go it alone. And we need to build better relationships with other states. And so that's where my head is at and where some of my other colleagues are, to think about interstate cooperation. And you have elements of that, even the preceding, right, on reproductive justice, on climate action. You had a bunch of these states coming together. But Sarah, you're a political scientist, right? Like if you look at the early days before political parties got started in Congress, people were working issue by issue and trying to cobble together coalitions. And over time, they found that it was more efficient to create a party to institutionalize some of that work so that you could work across issues. So that would be my dream coming out of this, is that there's some kind of coalitional federalism where you have California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, whoever. Yeah. And it doesn't all have to be blue states. States that want to solve problems and that can deliver for their residents. And if it's something that we can, and especially with the prospect of HHS becoming a failed agency, the Census Bureau becoming a failed Department of Education, like we need to figure out these answers very quickly so that we can continue serving the people we care about if these federal agencies start to crumble.
And I love that because and that is thinking outside of the box, right? I mean, when we talk about this time period and this new Trump administration, we have a toolbox full of things that we have been doing and have been using. And I think, Karthik, what you raised there is some fresh, new ways of thinking about it. But I wanted to drill down on something that you had mentioned, right? That Los Angeles is this incredible place and has long been the bastion of incredible community organizing. And yet, what is also true is that even here in LA County, what we can see is inroads that Trump made in 2024 that did not exist in 2020. Looking at the precinct data that's being mapped by the LA Times, and I want to put out the caveat that this is not final data. Of course, we still have those ballots being counted. But we can see that trend, particularly in some Latino and Asian American neighborhoods throughout the county, as well as the city of Los Angeles. Some of those northern parts of the city of Los Angeles, Pacoima, Sunland, Tujunga, you can see precincts there that went to Trump that had never gone to Trump previously. And I have to stop and wonder what is causing this shift, and I think there's going to be plenty of conversation, there's already been plenty of conversation about this kind of shift, but more importantly, what is the response from this very well-organized Los Angeles to some of this? Because I think, Karthik, you raised that it's not just here in LA, it's also in Orange County, it's in the Inland Empire. What strategies are being incorporated to talk to voters who are really turning away from some of those core values that I think we've thought of as being so essential to California for such a long time?
Well, I think, I've been thinking, of course, a lot about all of this, and one thing I keep thinking about is that they don't oppress us because we're bad and less than. That's why they tell us they oppress us, but they oppress us because they're afraid of our power. And that's a wise fear. And, you know, as Derek said, this is when the heroes come out. As Yvette said, you know, we really made great gains during both the first Trump administration in Los Angeles and during COVID. And folks, organizers in Los Angeles were extremely strategic in both of those cases. And already a week or so after the election, I can see how even more strategic organizers are in Los Angeles in response to this. And the reality is that, as Yvette said, folks, what the work we do is for, you know, is with low-income people, people of color, LGBTQ folks, party irrelevant, and it's not our responsibility to, I mean, like, the party is the party, and who goes on the party vote doesn't say anything about their values or our ability to bring them into the work and their desire to make the world better for all of us. And so here in Los Angeles over the last, well, let's remember the 90s when we were the bastion of regressive policies and racist policies, and Los Angeles has done its work over those decades to turn Los Angeles and California around, and there is a very strong and robust infrastructure for community organizing represented by Derek and Yvette and many others who are also brilliant and effective, and that they've built something that Trump can't take away, that, you know, a few red votes, you know, throughout LA County doesn't change. And before Trump was, first of all, this is the same nation it was 2 weeks ago, right? Like, let's not pretend there's we woke up to a different world. This is the world we live in. This is the nation we live in since our founding. But we are, in Los Angeles, we are on the precipice of major gains after decades of turning around the electorate, after decades of building the organizing infrastructure. In Los Angeles over the last several years, we've closed half of the youth jails. We've reduced the number of kids getting arrested in LA County by half. We banned neighborhood oil drilling in multiple jurisdictions. Yes, we've closed oil fields. We've brought in way stronger tenant protections than existed before Trump and before COVID. And we're on the precipice of what we're starting to call building the good, whereas decades and decades of just fighting against the bad and sort of, you know, just throwing rocks at the castle. And now real power has been built. And we're not only closing oil well sites, we're going to get federal money and state money to build affordable housing, to build community benefits, to build parks and other green infrastructure on those sites so they can never go back to oil drilling. Not only are we going to close these youth jails, and we're going to keep them closed and replace them with a youth development system that's going to be the biggest youth development system in the nation and is actually going to prevent kids from ever coming in contact with the police and all the downstream effects of that, homelessness and jail and poverty. So that's happening, and I don't think that Trump or, you know, whatever's happening with the electorate in Los Angeles or California changes that. I think, you know, what I'm hearing from organizers across LA is that, yes, we need to be on the defense, but we also need to stay on the offense. And I don't think anybody's backing down from that. And I don't think anyone in Los Angeles is backing down from building the positive, permanent infrastructure, services, and community in Los Angeles that's going to be needed. And, you know, there's going to be big obstacles, no doubt about it. I mean, whatever, there aren't enough adjectives. We all know how horrific it's going to be, and I think it's probably going to be worse than that. But there's real organizing happening here, and I think that what we know how to do as organizers is talk to people about their self-interest and talk to them in their language and about their values. And, you know, there may be some institutional parties that may not be as good as that. That's not good at that. That's not our responsibility. But we do know how to talk about safety. We do know how to talk about, you know, affordable housing. That's why we won Measure A. And I think the Prop 36, you know, post-mortem on that, I think has more to do with sort of the messaging of that campaign than it does have to do with the values of Angelenos and Californians in terms of helping us all be safe.
I just want to jump in really quickly to say that we are talking about low propensity voters, right? Who, for many of them, are coming into their political selves. All of us who are in this room, we are not normal people. How astute we are about all the different things that are happening politically in the landscape, all the nuances, and the regular day-to-day person is so focused on trying to survive that they are not as astute as we are. They're not thinking about the world in the way that we're doing it. They are very, very keenly aware of the circumstances and surroundings around them and what that lived experience can look like and how it feels. And yes, a lot of the things that were being brought forward in its macro conversation, not getting into the weeds of it, the concepts of it all, if I say you will, these are things that resonated. Because it's hard out here. In the state of California, especially, Los Angeles County specifically, it's tough. In the city of Inglewood by itself, over 60% of people are housing burden. It doesn't matter if you're a renter or an owner, which means that every single day I'm making business decisions about how to make sure that I can pay my rent or my mortgage, and also make sure that I can have the food I need and also the transportation I need to get to where I'm trying to go. I could care less about what you're talking about in your little meeting about the Democratic Party. I don't really care. But you know what? I'm gonna show up this time. I'm gonna vote because I'm gonna vote on the things that actually matter to me. That's what happened. So I think there's an understanding, and I want to underscore something that Shane said about going out and having the conversation with people about what they're really going through and bringing forth the things that are necessary for them to be able to live whole, free, thriving lives. The future of democracy is in how we engage with each other. It's always been that.
And I don't think there's a better way to say it than that, right? The future of democracy is how we engage with one another. I know that we could have this conversation all night long, but I want to open it up to questions from the audience. We have time for probably 2 to 3 questions. There is a student, Chris, on this side of the room with a microphone. And so if you have a question, please feel free to come and use that microphone. Yes. Okay. There's Chris. Thank you, Chris.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, you just stand right here.
Oh, so they can see on the screen.
Okay. Oh, you hold it up.
Yeah, because it's all Zoom. We got the Zoom crowd. Yeah.
Oh. Hi, I'm Teresa Sutherland. I'm not here in my official capacity, but I am the communications director for Assemblymember Isaac Bryan.
Nice.
But I'm also a Galbraith Fellow.
All right.
So I guess what I'm wondering, I'd be curious to hear from each of you. You know, you've already kind of spoken a bit to where you see, you know, where energy could be best spent. You know, how organizing and working on democracy in a more personal way could be more effective. So I guess what I would want to ask is, come January, where are each of you putting your energy and your efforts?
Should I kick us off?
Yeah.
So in terms of La Defensa, we are working on several fronts. So the first is federal immigration court. So we run the Court Watch LA program here in Los Angeles, and it's been primarily in criminal courts. But we are expanding with our immigration partners to watch the federal immigration court proceedings, because that is the wild, wild west in there. There's very little oversight. What folks go through the federal immigration court system, we question how legal it is. And so we will be in there watching, reporting, and uplifting the stories of folks going through that process. We also have a program called Talk. It's transformative organizing conversations, and it really speaks to what we've been uplifting today, which is having conversations directly in the community, but we take it a little bit deeper. So we train community members on how to have conversations around hard topics with their elders and with their peers. Because me, Yvette, I could knock on a door and try to convince someone around a specific issue, but if it's that person's grandchild, if it's that person's cousin or best friend, having that tough conversation around whether or not LA County should lock up more people or should lock up children, it's more powerful when you hear it from someone you know. So we train folks on how to have those tough conversations with love, with compassion, with grace, how to de-escalate, right? We're getting close to Thanksgiving. We need to have some transformative organizing conversations with our folks, right? Calling folks in, but with care. And so that's a program that we're gonna continue to ramp up in the next year. We're also continuing the Reimagine LA Coalition, right? That's the body that's supporting the implementation of Measure J in the community. So we're going to continue to funnel more funds, our public dollars, right? That's our dollars, our money, into the hands of our service providers and our community members.
And if everyone can say their piece quickly so that we can get to some additional questions.
So I'll be quickly because this is the last question I can answer. What I'll be doing is a little distinct from API data. So for API data, essentially we're a national think tank on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. We are going to continue survey research to understand, where our community stands on different aspects of the Trump agenda as it rolls out, right? So some of the day one priorities, we're going to have a survey that'll be released around the inauguration. And we approach this with an open mind. Right, chances are on deportation, that opinion has shifted in our community as well. We have some prior data on this in which, the good immigrant, bad immigrant narrative that we all thought had, and it does have very harmful consequences, but it is not only alive, it is very strong in our communities, including communities of color. So we'll be, trying to understand our populations and to show aspects of the Trump agenda where there may be majority support and the ones in which there is strong opposition. As a scholar, I'm going to be working on this strategic federalism work and to think especially about interstate federalism.
And I know, Karthik, that you have to go, but I want to just thank you so much for being here and sharing all of your expertise with us.
No, I learned so much. It is amazing, the grassroots organizing, and I think, I leave today more hopeful than I was an hour ago, so thank you.
Perfect. Shane, what will you be up to come January?
We're going to keep doing what we've been doing. The opportunity ahead of us is to focus on implementation of recent victories as well as what we're calling building the good. So we won the mansion tax a year or so ago. That's already generated $439 million for affordable housing and tenant protections in the city of Los Angeles. We're going to focus on implementing Measure A, which we just won. All of that is going to protect tenants, keep tenants in their homes, which equals preventing homelessness, as well as finding ways to build affordable housing that are community controlled and not subject to market forces so that they can remain affordable permanently. We're also going to be focused on continuing to implement the oil bans, and this is about the backlash. These folks, oh my Lord have mercy. It's like they can't get it together when the fight is happening, and then just when we, sit down to take a breath, they come back with the backlash. And so all the victories that we've won here in Los Angeles have been sued multiple times, have been ballot measures have been tried or actually successfully put on to repeal them. So that's happening with the oil drilling stuff. We did back them off from a repeal measure on the state ballot. But there's still multiple lawsuits, so we're going to keep fighting that and make sure there's no more oil drilling in Los Angeles neighborhoods and those facilities are replaced with community benefits. And then we're going to keep going with our Care First vision, which both Yvette and Derek talked about, which is making sure that kids have the love and support and resources they need so that they the minimum thing is they shouldn't go to jail, but they should also be able to grow up and be the leaders and the brothers and sisters and moms and friends that they're meant to be. And so we're going to keep moving with that. We're going to keep building that youth development system. We're going to keep making sure that kids, and in Liberty Hill's case, we're focusing on girls and LGBTQ youth to make sure that we're really targeting and making sure that that we get to zero on all youth and girls and LGBTQ youth. So yeah, implementation and building the good, building permanent infrastructure controlled by community that cannot be taken away.
Derek?
Quickly, the same, right? And if you don't know much about the Social Justice Learning Institute, you can go to www.sjli.org and find out more about the work we're doing in schools, solving a lot of these big questions around how we eliminate the food insecurity issue while also making our communities more conducive to healthy lifestyles, how we're ending the school to prison pipeline while building the youth leaders of tomorrow, today, how we are also making sure the policies and also the advocacy efforts that are needed to make sure people can live whole, free, thriving lives are available, accessible, and implemented, right? You know, educational equity, health equity is our forte, but also creating the containers and the spaces like Bold Vision, which is making sure that BIPOC youth are thriving in LA and are prepared to take on ownership of the future, being in a youth-led space to make sure that they have a voice in all the things that Shane was talking about, all the different spaces that Yvette was talking about, right? Youth voice needs to be a part of this conversation because the world that we're shaping is theirs, right? So we're going to continue to do that work. Also working with our partners throughout the Black Experience Action Team, right? Black belonging, anti-Blackness is synonymous with the system of white supremacy that was created here. And so if we can create spaces where Black folks belong, that makes sure that we're creating spaces where all folks belong, right? Because those who are most impacted, you know, through all the systems that exist and are at play, if we can help to upend those systems, we can start talking about shared abundance. We can start talking about repairing the harm. We can start talking about rebuilding trust and also systems for care and also safety that are very real, tangible things that people can actually touch, feel, and love and enjoy, right? And so we're doing that work, and the work is going to continue. It's not going to stop.
Perfect. We are slightly over time, but I see Sarah Pillsbury has been waiting patiently for her question.
And it's a kind of a boring question. And what I mean to say is everything that you all talked about, you know, pictures come to mind. You know, you can see where people can fit in, what they can do, you know, what results might happen. But when you're talking about Measure G, right? And this huge overhaul of county government, you know, this is a big change came about without a movement pushing it through. There was a feeling that things weren't right and let's just throw the cards in the air. But now that the cards are up in the air, how do we get the cards into the hands of people, get them excited and making these changes? Because I, for one, for example, don't like the idea of a no term limits on the county executive, so for one. But how will you get people engaged, and how can people be engaged?
The Measure G selection committee, or there's a group that they're just talking about bringing forth right now. Call your supervisor, let them know that it needs to be community built, not the supervisors being able to put their finger on the scale to be able to have their say about how the governance is actually going to be reformed. That's happening right now. They're going to be talking about this at the next meeting next week. Call them now. Tell them what you want. Tell all of them. Lindsay Horvath specifically, chill out, slow down. Let's do this right to make sure that all folks have a say in what the future of LA County is going to be. They got away with rushing it through. They just got away with that. Let's not let them get away with the process of making sure that our voices, don't let them squelch our voices. We need to do the work to actually lean in. That's all of us, right? The organizers are going to organize, but the everyday people who are in the know of the things that are happening, y'all gotta lean in. You gotta make the phone calls. You gotta slow them down, because the conversation is, oh, we won this thing, the people want this, so we're going to do it the way we're going to do it. No. We have to make sure that our voices are heard in this. It's so critical. I really mean it. Like the ethics committee is probably going to be one of the things that comes up behind it, but this idea of the group that's actually going to help do the work to define all the fine details of what Measure G's implementation will be, that is a selection conversation right now at the next meeting.
I know I'm the moderator, but I have to weigh in to some extent because I was one of the supporters of Measure G. I can feel the tension. You know, and I completely agree with you. And the Governance Reform Task Force is being put together right away, which was a mandate of the Measure G as written. I'll back up just slightly to say, you know, as we think about the history of Los Angeles, that the history of governance reform has been there as well. The movement to reform the county has existed since the early 1900s. In fact, just after the county's charter was enacted. In the 1960s, when the Kenneth Hahn Hall of Administration was built, there were extra desks that were originally added because they thought it can't possibly stay with 5 members. The county is growing. And yet, time and time again, many forces, and there were a whole host of different ones in each decade that these reforms were attempted, shot down any attempt at reform. And in fact, even going back to the 1970s, all of the reforms that have been studied, examined, had communities that were involved in them, looked almost exactly the same to what was actually passed. 9 members and an elected CEO. So I think there was a long history leading to this point. And unfortunately, even when the movement had began to have a community engaged process, it was shot down. It was slowed down. It wasn't moved forward. The consultants were never hired. And so, yeah, it was moved forward very fast. But I'm not sure that it would ever have changed otherwise. And this has been a movement long in the process. But I completely agree with you. This is a absolutely needs community involvement from this point forward, and there are enormous changes that are on the way, and absolutely community needs to be a part of that implementation.
I just want to push back a little bit.
Sure.
Because it's been passed, so it is what it is at this point. But I just want to be clear, the studies that have been done in the past, we are in a point in LA County where there is the most people that we have ever had, where the landscape is just completely different. And the efforts for community engagement, the ball was already gone by the time they tried to come and talk to us. And even the motion to pass, it was unanimous about the plan the year before about how to do it, right? The conversation of like, well, it was just moving too slow. Democracy and community voice takes time, for real. Like it's a real thing. Like so even in this measure for Measure G, there were steps that could have been taken to make sure that we were all engaged. So all that is what it is. We're at this point now. We're just saying, right now, don't take that same energy you did to put it in with the steps you're about to take to try to get it forward. That's crazy. That's crazy. For all the people who are here who want to be engaged, there are people who want to be a part of the conversation, leave space. We got time. The first election on this thing is not even happening until like 5 years from now. We got time. Slow down. Take your time, engage the people. That's all I'm
And
saying.
with that, I completely agree.
Can I just say one last thing? I know
you
you're
wanna
trying
go?
to
and
end
then
it.
we are past time, but yeah.
It's so important.
I just want to say, no, I know, I mean, we all feel the despair and the overwhelm of everything that's happening and the sense of powerlessness, and that's all very calculated and intentional. But please know that, I mean, libertyhill.org, come to our website. You can find a list of organizations like Yvette's and like Derek's that are doing extraordinary work. There are no more brilliant and effective folks nowhere are there more brilliant and effective folks than in organizing in Los Angeles. Yeah. And there's so much you can do. And the first thing, and it's somebody else's job to organize folks like you. That's not, our job. But what you can do is give resources to these organizations. Get your friends to give. Have a party. Do a fundraiser. Pick one. These two, any other one. That will give you the sense of resilience and hope that these folks feel. It will enable you to contribute in a meaningful way. And the ROI on these dollars are ridiculous. If either one of them were to tell you how much it cost them to do what they did, you'd be like, oh my God, that's like my best friend's household budget. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, these folks make money go a really long way. So I just really want to encourage you to contribute. It is something you can do. It's something that matters, and it'll make you feel better.
Perfect. Yvette, Derek, any final words?
I've said enough.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. It's ways that you can plug in. Come court watch with us. If you're a student, if you're retired, If you have some free time in a morning or an afternoon, come court watch with us. We'll train you. We do court watch trainings every month. So we'll teach you on what to listen to in a courtroom, what the process looks like. That helps us collect data, which helps us help our community. It's super valuable. Check out Rate My Judge. And if you or a loved one is going to court, whether it be family court, criminal court, housing court, use Rate My Judge. We want to hear your experiences in the courtroom. It's how we identify which judges are for the community and upholding justice and which ones are targeting our folks, that are not helping our communities. Also, check out our website, ladefensa.org. We have toolkits. I mentioned transformative organizing conversations. Download our toolkit and see if it helps you have some of those tough conversations with your loved ones in the coming holidays. Check out our website for Reimagine LA. That's reimagine.la. And that work that Derek is doing, that our colleagues, Megan Castillo, who's leading the coalition, is really groundbreaking. We're doing participatory budgeting in South LA and District 2 in collaboration with Holly Mitchell's office. We fundraised $1 million. Supervisor Holly Mitchell matched that, and we are giving the decision-making to the community in South Los Angeles on what to do with that money. That is direct democracy. And we're teaching folks how to engage with their county. We're teaching civics in the process. Their communities get money, they get education around the budget, and they're going to be more engaged voters come the next electoral cycle. So check out our work, plug into our work. Everybody's welcome.
Last thing I will say to the camera.
The last word.
Democracy is a team sport. Pull up. This is not the time to sit on the sidelines. This is a moment that they will talk about. And when you are talking to your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews, when they're a little older and they ask the questions about what happened during this time, you want to make sure you say you was on the team. This is not the time to sit tight. Democracy is a team sport. Let's get it going. Let's get the work done. Let's do it together.
Yes.
Well, thank you all so much for being here this evening. I open the news every day and I feel a little gloom and terror, quite frankly, but I'm feeling really excited about the future after this conversation, and I think you've brought a lot of hope into this room. So thank you so much for being here, and many thanks to the Pat Brown Institute for hosting this wonderful event.
Thank you so much. That was really uplifting, and I love it. It's a team sport. Lean in. I definitely think the Pat Brown Institute has some convening listening sessions to do around Measure G. I think we know what we're going to be doing. Everybody, thank you for being here. There's more food. There's more drink. Please stay, mingle, and remember to continue to stay engaged. Thanks so much for coming out.
Thank you.